Okay. Yeah. Yeah, perhaps you will go 5 minutes and say, yeah, that's
So is this a good volume?
Yeah. It's a mouthful. Yeah. Melon red,
Okay.
orange, and
Hello?
Talk to you later.
they're just a more
Hey. How's the volume now? Is that better? More?
yeah.
Mr. Mike, please.
All right. How's that? All right. Yeah, that sounds good. So, all right. Ethan, are you ready? All right. So I guess we'll get started. So my name is Knauft. Thank you everyone for coming out here today. I'm going to be talking to you about global warming, really focusing on the science of global warming, just the most up-to-date information about what the world's climate researchers know, with a focus on what's going to be the most relevant for you as individuals. Basically trying to answer these questions of, well, is global warming real? How does it work? Is it our fault? Is it caused by humans? And what are the consequences? What really are the impacts on human life in generations to come or even decades to come? So, and then after that, there will also be other speakers who will talk about other topics around how to reduce your carbon footprint and also how to offset the rest. So let's get started. So there's a lot of scientific content to this presentation. So it's very important to know where this information is coming from. So there's all of the information in this presentation comes from a report from an organization called the IPCC. The IPCC stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And what they are is a group of 2,500 scientists from all over the world who are volunteering their time. And their goal is to take a look at these thousands and thousands of journal articles published by the world's leading scientists in climate research, this vast body of knowledge, and boil it down to basically a 60-page report, which an educated layperson or a policymaker, a government leader could understand. And just, basically, so this is the summary, the most accessible summary of the climate research that has been done by the leading scientists around the world. They're very credible. They shared the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize with Al Gore. Their findings have been endorsed by 45 scientific communities and academies of science around the world. So they are, their information really is the cutting-edge research about what we know about climate change. Another thing about the IPCC is that they're very, as scientists, they're very concerned with what they know and what they don't know. So they don't make statements unless they have a lot of evidence to support that. And they're very careful about using words like likely or very likely to qualify statements which only have a certain amount of scientific evidence behind them. So when the IPCC says something outright as without any qualifiers, or says that something is unequivocal, that basically means that that statement is backed by a vast body, an incredible body of scientific research. So I'd like to start out the presentation with one of those kind of statements. So I won't read many quotes to you, but this one was just really powerful. So this is from the IPCC report. Warming of the climate system is unequivocal, as is now evident from observations of increases in global average air and ocean temperatures, widespread melting of snow and ice, and rising global average sea level. So basically, from these phenomena, these natural phenomena that are empirically measurable, they can deduce that it is certain that the climate system is warming. As of 2006, there was a study that said that 11 out of the last 12 years were among the 12 warmest years in recorded history. So basically, with only one exception, the last 12 years were the hottest that have ever been recorded. Also, there's very high confidence that the climate change is strongly affecting ecosystems. So by studying measurable patterns in bird migration, plant growth, this kind of thing, they can actually see that not only is climate change real, it actually has a measurable impact on natural systems. Also, also hot days have basically become more frequent since the mid-1950s. So the next thing is, well, couldn't it be natural? That's one question that's very useful to ask. Maybe there's some natural variation in climate. There was a warm period in the medieval ages. Maybe this is a medieval warming period take two. We want to see if that could be the case. So basically the IPCC report comes out and says that this is very unlikely to be the case. Most of the increase over the last 60 years is very likely due to human greenhouse gas emissions. And without human effects, we probably would have actually had cooling over the last 50 years. So, with all of their climate models, all of the very advanced science, the most likely direction over the last 50 years would have actually been cooling. So, but let's take a little bit of a look at how they draw these conclusions. These are pretty big statements, and it's good to get an understanding of where they're coming from. So let's talk a little bit about how global warming actually works. And to do that, we're going to talk about carbon. There are actually other greenhouse gases as well, like methane. There are, I think, about 3 or 4 that are really prominent, which basically greenhouse gases that are a byproduct of any kind of energy use, coal power plants, driving your cars, that kind of thing. And greenhouse gases act kind of like a blanket. So if you imagine you're sitting in your bed, laying in your bed on a cool autumn night, and you don't have a cover over you, your body is going to produce a certain amount of heat, and a certain amount of that heat is going to escape into the air. And as a result of those two things, you're going to have a certain temperature, which in this case, since it's a cool autumn night, is probably a little bit chilly. And then if you say, okay, I want to get warmer, and I'll put a heavy blanket over me, your body is still going to produce a similar amount of heat, but more of that heat is going to be reflected back to you, and less of it's going to escape out into the air. So basically, greenhouse gases are like a blanket for the entire Earth. They prevent the energy that comes in from the sun from radiating back out into space. And this link is very, very well understood. There's not this is not a kind of a hypothetical theory that's unverified. They basically, it's not a question of if, it's just a question of how much. So one question that scientists like to ask is, if you double the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, how much would that actually increase the temperature? And it turns out that the most likely estimate for that is 5.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's very unlikely that it would be less than 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's definitely not zero, is the main thing. So, and we'll talk a little bit in a second about how close we are to that doubling. So we have a link between greenhouse gases and warming climate, and then we know that the climate is warming. So the next question is it our fault? Are we producing enough greenhouse gases to actually drive this warming of the climate? And the answer is definitely a resounding yes. If you take a look at this graph over here, you'll see that this is a graph of the amount of carbon dioxide, or the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from 10,000 years BC to the present day. And as you'll see, in the natural, before the Industrial Revolution, it was pretty flat, around a little over 250 parts per million. And then at the very end, you see this huge spike where it basically jumps up to over 375 parts per million, which is not quite doubling, but it's pretty close to getting there. And then if you zoom in on that little section here, you see this small box over here. So basically you see that around the 1800s, we had the Industrial Revolution, and the rate of change started to get a lot faster. A lot of factories caused a lot more carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases to be emitted. And then from the 1950s on to the present day, the rate's been even higher than that. So basically the message to take away from this is the greenhouse gas concentration now are far in excess of what it's been for the past, well, this graph shows 10,000 years, but actually in the past 650,000 years. So this is far beyond anything that's ever occurred naturally. It's definitely a result of human activity, and it's getting faster, it's getting worse. Since the 1950s, even with the increasing awareness of the problems of global climate change since the 80s, it's still on a path to get worse. So this is really a trend that we need to reverse.